Hey, SmartPak fans, I'm SmartPaker Dan. She's Dr. Lydia Gray, SmartPak staff veterinarian and medical director, and we're here to answer horse health questions asked and voted on by you.
We did have a comment. We had a user or customer contact me. She said that somebody gave her a severely malnourished horse, and she watched our videos and resorted to help, which I think is very heartwarming.
That's fantastic. It does feel good that the advice you're giving is helping horse owners
actually helping real life horses and real life people. So
you're a fantastic resource, people. And actually, if anybody wants to check out the rest of that story, we actually answered that question in our previous video. We'll put the link in the description so you can see the amazing advice that Dr. Gray gave to help that horse out. But I actually have some news for you. So we have a special guest with us today on Ask the Vet, Danvers Child, certified Journeyman Farrier and International Horseshoeing Hall of Fame member, is here to answer a hoof health question for us. So welcome, Danvers, to Ask the Vet.
Good to be here.
We appreciate you joining us. This is your first time on Ask the Vet, but for people who are fans of SmartPak videos, know that Danvers has done quite a series of videos for us in the past on hoof health questions. So definitely need your expertise on this one because we just received a question on Facebook from Jennifer. And Jennifer wants to know, with all the spring rain and mud, there is a concern for the development of conditions in the hoof, such as thrush. Besides picking the hoof and regular trims, is there any other treatment that one can use to prevent this? Also, it seems that when a horse develops thrush in a foot, this hoof tends to get thrush more often than the others, even after treatment. Does it lay dormant in there? Is there a change in the hoof that causes it to be more susceptible to thrush again? Thanks again in advance for your answer. So we've done lots of questions in the past about thrush. You've done videos for us before in the past about thrush, but we've never quite answered this question exactly. So I'm very curious to see what you've got to say for us.
Me too.
Well, it's kind of cool because there's a lot of layers in that question.
There's a lot. There's a lot of questions, but I'll make sure we keep us on track and answer them all.
Great. Okay, the first thing is the idea of thrush is it's prevalent. It's, even whether you live in wet or dry, it doesn't matter. People are going to encounter thrush, and everyone talks about it as a hygiene problem, and it is to a certain extent. But what she mentioned was the idea of regular maintenance and hoof picking, and I think that's a key factor that we all have to think about. And a good friend of mine and of Lydia's, Dr. Stephen O'Grady, always says that the best treatment for thrush is a rasp.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and I think that's really really cool. I mean, the idea of maintenance and working with that is key and critical. And the more you can do regular maintenance and keep that foot balanced, the better off you are. Trimmed, balanced, well maintained. Professional maintenance is key. But beyond that, you've got to figure out the levels of thrush that you're dealing with. We don't actually have a grading system for it, but if you have it in the lateral sulci, the frog's kind of a triangular shape, and if you have it in on the outside on those of that triangle, it's usually superficial, and you can treat it with pretty much anything. When you get it into the central line, the central sulci, back in the center of the frog and toward the bulbs, then you start getting voids and pockets, and those are critical to treat. So I think she asked about treatment protocols and what to use, what products to use. So I think that it's key that we take any voids and fill them with something productive. Otherwise, they're going to fill with something counterproductive or non-productive. So I like to use Hawthorne Soul Pack, Magic Cushion, even cotton soaked in betadine. I think these are ways that we can take that void and fill it. If we fill it with something tame and mild, then we get good new growth. because the hoof doesn't heal. What we're dealing with is dead tissue. So we're not looking at something that's going to heal. We're looking at something that needs to regenerate and grow anew. So
I think that's a great point that a lot of people forget, is that you're actually, the hoof, you're trying to regenerate it. It's not going to heal. I think people kind of forget that little nuance there when trying to treat things like this.
Absolutely. And if we pour caustic agents on that, then we're going to retard that healing or slow down that new growth. And I think that I'm going to digress a moment. One of the things about thrush is that it rarely causes a profound lameness. It's an irritant. It will cause lameness, but it's not something like founder or laminitis that's going to cause a huge lameness. Therefore, it doesn't get a lot of research. And what we tend to say, oh, well, he's got thrush, we'll treat it. And how do we go about treating it? Well, daddy did it this way. And so the minute we fall into that, daddy did it this way, then we start doing foolish things like pouring bleach on it. And if you pour that caustic agent on and treat it with caustic agents, then you're going to retard the new growth. And I think that it's critical that we use something mild and allow that hoof to regenerate.
And you mentioned working with a farrier. This is a good time. You also should be working with your veterinarian. They're your best.
Absolutely.
Those two healthcare professionals are your best resources for what should go in the foot. And like you said before, if it's superficial or deeper, they can help you diagnose and treat that. So don't forget about them.
Absolutely. And everything should be a team effort here. And it doesn't always work that way, but it should.
So the last part of her question, I think, was really interesting. Was does it lay dormant, and if they have thrush, are they more susceptible to get thrush again? Exactly.
And she also said something about getting thrush in one foot.
Yes.
And I think that those two kind of go hand in hand. As I said previously, we always talk about thrush as a hygiene issue. And you go to the literature, that's all you find. But that's not necessarily the case. I go in very pristine, clean barns where horses will have thrush, and people are actually ashamed or embarrassed, thinking that they've failed somehow and that they're not doing proper cleaning. And I think what really happens here and what we need to recognize is that thrush is tied very closely to circulation and vascularity. And you'll see in a foot that's compromised, a club foot, an injured foot, something of that sort, you'll see thrush show up in that one foot and not in the other three. So it's not simply a hygiene problem. It's a vascularity and circulation issue. And that goes back to the regular maintenance. You get proper loading, you get even loading. And anytime you've got a horse that's loading unevenly, that foot is going to be more susceptible to the problem. So it can very much be a gait or a lameness issue or a loading and landing issue as much as it can be a hygiene issue. So circulation is a key element here, and which is probably a good time to point out that we do make a product that's Smart Circulate, and we do have that in our ultimate in our hoof care ultimate mix. So circulation is vital, and activity and exercise, getting that horse out, moving around, working, anything you can do to promote good circulation and good vascularity is going to be wonderful for the hoof, not just for thrush issues, but for the horse.
That is fantastic. And I think that's such an interesting point here, because everyone does mention like the hygiene issue and maintaining your facility, but there's this other component that we don't really talk about a lot, which is that vascularity and promoting normal blood flow. So I think that's a great point to bring up as well. And to Lydia's, earlier comment about working with the vet, working with the farrier to make sure you really are coming with a program that's going to help best support your horse. And the condition that they have is really the best way to move forward for sure. But Danvers, thank you so much for taking the time to answer that question.
Fantastic.
Gosh, we could talk about that all day long. But we greatly appreciate your expertise and you joining us today.
I enjoyed being here. Appreciate working with you.
Well, thank you so much again. And that brings us to question number 2. This was submitted by Ava on YouTube. And Ava says, I have a 3-year-old mare that is a barrel horse and does heavier workouts. She'll be laying down sleeping in the morning and is exhausted, but won't show it to me when we are riding because she wants to please me so badly. She is on light workouts for now until we get a supplement for her and shoes. No, she is not colicking. She is just so tired in the mornings and her muscles are sore. Do you have any recommendations for a supplement for her? In all capital letters, so clearly Ava really wants some help here. This horse kind of sounds like me in the morning.
It actually kind of sounds like my young horse. I have a 3-year-old, and did I tell you he sleeps from 9 a.m. to 12 noon every day?
I think I sent you in an email the other day, a photo you sent me, and I was like, any photo I've ever seen of your horse is always laying down.
He's always laying down. And one of my friends said, I hope you don't have a test from 9 to 12 because he's not going to be, awake.
It's not going to go well.
So the point of that is that young growing horses, and at 3, I would consider hers, no matter the breed, a young growing horse. And they do need a lot of sleep, like children need a lot of sleep, just to grow and develop. So don't neglect that part of your horse's upbringing. I'm actually not going to recommend a supplement. What we're going to talk about is conditioning and training and rest and those sorts of things. You probably heard the phrases overtraining and overloading when it comes to like conditioning horses for events and just working a horse 7 days a week and showing every weekend and traveling. That's hard on them, and they need to rest, or they can have injuries. I mean, if you overload the tendons and ligaments and bones, even, you can have an injury. But a chronic fatigue can set in, and that can take a long time to they can recover from. But in this case, it sounds more like overreaching, where they might just be doing a little bit more than their 3-year-old is capable of at this moment in time. It doesn't say how long the horse has been under saddle, I think.
We don't mention that at all.
Okay. Because I went to my library and I picked up one of my favorite books. It's Conditioning Sport Horses by Dr. Hilary Clayton. And she talks a lot about how to prepare the horse that's new to being under saddle and whatever his discipline is going to be, as well as the adult horse who's already in the discipline, how to improve their fitness. And she talks about like the strategies for peaking for a show, and layoff and that sort of thing. But I found some good statements in that book. As a general rule, horses should not perform the same type of conditioning exercise on consecutive days. And that helps minimize the risk of overloading injuries due to insufficient time between workouts to repair. So it could be that this horse is just not having enough time between even light workouts to rebuild or repair, regenerate tissue. It sounds like she needs rest, and that's what she should have more so than a supplement, I think. She also says, in a young horse that is being conditioned for the first time, the progress must be slow to allow for adequate time for the supporting structures, and that's the hose, the bone, the cartilage, the ligaments, the tendons, to adapt. It takes time, especially the soft tissues, the connective tissues, to adapt to the workload, the stress of activity.
Well, it's like even for people, if they take on a new workout regime, like if you also run 5 miles your first time running, your body's used to that, your bones and joints and ligaments aren't used to that. So if you try to keep doing that, it's gonna, you're gonna start seeing injuries and pain and soreness.
It's why there's this thing that some of us may be doing called couch to 5K. Every week you get a different interval training. Interval training, by the way, is one thing that she talks about she has 3 components of conditioning. There's cardiovascular, there's strength building, or building up your muscles, and then the suppling or maintaining flexibility. And in that cardiovascular conditioning, she talks about interval training in horses. It's the thing, inertial drills or speed drills. Like, remember in school when you had to run from the middle line to the end of the basketball court and back and like touch it. Yeah, that's an inertial drill or speed drill. So they do that in horses too, especially ones that are in these sprint sports.
Like, well, I was gonna say for like barrel racing, that would be perfect for.
And the nice thing about her book is that once you get through the middle portion, which is general advice, like long, slow distance, in a young horse that's never, like first time under saddle, can take 6 months where you mostly walk, a little bit of trot, and build them up, adding distance and speed over time so that your horse can do 45 minutes to an hour of walk and jog and lope comfortably. But that has to be built up slowly over time. And then after you get through that general advice, she gets to specific advice for barrel racing and talks about the interval training and the inertial drills. But she also says the frequency of cardiovascular conditioning for these sprint type sports is 3 times a week in the early stages. It's reduced to 2 times a week when the acceleration sprints are well established. I mean, she gets really specific.
So 3 days a week, and then actually cutting down to 2 days a week once you've kind of built up.
Because you do it more frequently when you're building up. And then once your horse is established fitness, you can back off to when you're just maintaining. You don't need it as often.
Interesting. Okay.
This is important too. On the days between conditioning workouts, so you do not do a conditioning workout every day. The horse is schooled or exercised at a low intensity for 45 to 60 minutes. Now, I'm not an expert on barrel training, but I do know they do walk the pattern and work on turning and that sort of thing. So those would be great days to do that.
Like work on bending and stretching and getting the sound and things like that. Move off your leg and like that.
And then finally, in a young horse that is just being started under saddle, the frequency of exercise is every second day. So only 3 to 4 times a week. And the duration is short, 10 to 15 minutes. And the intensity is low, mostly walking, some trotting. So I want to make sure that this person has done that preparatory work before they've got into the actual specific barrel race training on a horse. Because you might need to back up a step and restart and let her horse, get on a schedule, use your journal and document it, and give the horse some adequate time to rest.
Yeah, and to your point about the journaling, you can journal, be like, okay, I did this yesterday, and then this morning she was less tired or was more tired. Do I have to back off or adjust for tomorrow or what I'm doing?
Perfect. Yep, that's exactly how you do it.
Well, I think that's perfect. And I think with all of us, we all fall into the habit. We get really excited with our horse doing something. We want to do more and more of it. So this is great advice, and especially for 3-year-olds. So Ava, I hope that helps you, and definitely keep us up to date on how your mare is doing. So with that, we're going to move on to question number 3. And this was submitted by Sophia Bayer on YouTube. Sophia is actually from Argentina, and she commented a month or 2 ago that she created a booklet from Ask the Vet segments that apply to her horse. She did photos to look at as well. But I think that's so cool that someone from Argentina is using your advice to help her horse out.
Yes.
Well, so Sophia actually now has a specific question for you. Probably she couldn't find a previous video on this.
Okay.
Wants to know, can you feed honey? If so, what nutrients does it provide to our horses? Thank you very much. I love your videos.
All right. So I think honey has had a recent surge in popularity. I mean, would you agree with that? Like, it just seems to be everywhere, used for everything right now. It's very popular.
One of the hot topics right now. Yeah. Trending.
Hashtag honey, whatever. But one of the things that I see it used for a lot, and it's actually in the scientific literature, is on wounds.
Oh.
Now, she didn't ask that. That's a different ask to vet, and maybe somebody will ask that, and we'll talk about that then. But today we're talking about
hint to all you people out there trying to submit questions.
I know. Wink. So anyway, this today is feeding honey, and the short story is honey doesn't provide much in the way of nutrition. So it's got negligible levels of protein and fat and fiber and like trace levels of vitamins and minerals, but it does have a pretty high levels of plant compounds or of bioflavonoids that serve as antioxidants.
Okay.
Yeah, and right. And so there was actually a study on buckwheat honey in particular that said it can increase the levels of antioxidants in your blood.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And that's buckwheat honey specifically, okay.
Right, right. And so there's that component. The other is a tablespoon of honey is about 21 grams, and there's 17 grams of sugar in that one tablespoon. So it is mostly sugar. And so it's tasty, and it's a readily available source of energy. So I think I read that a lot of endurance horses, people are giving it to their endurance horses when they're racing to sort of as a pick-me-up, as a quick burst of energy and speed.
Get a little sugar boost before going, yeah.
A little sugar boost, yeah. The nice thing the neat thing about honey is that it's not just like table sugar, refined, overly processed glucose. It's made up of a couple of, so there's glucose, there's sucrose, there's maltose, and fructose. It's not high fructose corn syrup, that really overprocessed stuff you find in, cereals and ketchup and things. And so kind of the bottom line is it's a less bad sweetener.
It's the best of the bad options.
There you go. So you use it in very small amounts, and you can use it to, if you have a picky eater, you throw it in. You can use like molasses. If you trying to hide or mask medication, it can be handy. I've used it for teaching a young, maybe 3-year-old horse to accept the bit. He's like,
I wonder which horse that could be.
I have no idea. This is fabulous. You can put it on your deworming syringe, and they can be like, well, at first it tasted good, and then it got a little bitter. So that the one thing I want to point out though is that you don't want to use the off-the-shelf grocery store honey. Don't get the idea that is what goes in a wound. So if until we do our video on that, talk to your vet and use the medical grade honey. So that's a separate issue. You also don't want to give honey to a foal. And it's the same reason that human doctors advise not giving human infants honey, because it could contain botulism spores, and the immature gut is not capable of protecting itself against that. And there are cases in the literature of horse babies and human babies getting botulism from honey. So it's only for adult horses, and it's only in small amounts for those specific uses.
That's all. Okay, so it sounds like honey can potentially help with some antioxidant support.
Yeah.
Little boost of energy if needed, and also can be kind of helpful for in training, or if you need your horse to mask something that your horse is trying to feed your horse. But other than that, as far as like nutritionally, there's not much benefit.
No, it's just natural sugar.
Perfect. Well, Sophia, thank you so much for asking that question, and thank you for watching Ask the Vet all the way in Argentina. Definitely keep us posted on how your horse is doing. And that brings us to question number 4. This was submitted by Kaylee Equestrian on Instagram. And Kaylee wants to know, any tips for going through vet school? Thinking about making that my career path and want to be as knowledgeable about the process as possible. So we actually got a lot of YouTube community comments on this as well. A lot of people who want to make this their career and help animals and want as much advice as possible. So Dr. Gray, I'm sure you have plenty of great stories about making it through vet school.
Well, I do, but they're quite old. And so I thought, to be the most helpful to this person, I wanted to reach out to some people who maybe were more frequent, had done it just recently. So I contacted the former SmartPak vet student class rep. Say that 3 times fast.
Yeah.
She's a 2020 graduate of my alma mater, which is the University of Illinois College of Veterinary Medicine. Her name now is Dr. Cheyenne Sams. And she's at the Piedmont Equine in the Plains, Virginia. So we brought her on as a special guest today so that she can say more recently what some tips might be. Cheyenne, Dr. Sams.
Very excited. Congratulations, by the way, Dr. Sams.
Oh, thank you. It's a lot of work. And I'm here with Dr. Meredith Frey, who is a 2020 graduate of Colorado State Veterinary School.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So what tips do you guys have for getting through vet school? I mean, you just recently did it, so I'm sure you guys know all the ins and outs of how to survive.
Yep. Yeah, it's hard. I think the first thing to know is that it's hard, and it's not just going to be a walk in the park. A lot of people from school, like from my school, said that they had an easy time in college, and that vet school was a lot tougher. It's not a walk in the park, but it's very rewarding. I think when you get to 4th year and you go down clinics, and you can see that you have learned so much and grown so much, I think it's all worth it in the end.
Yeah, some of those moments I remember specifically in 4th year where I surprised myself. I was like, oh, I knew that. Like I'm starting to have that kind of perception of being a doctor, you know, in the 4th year where we're almost close to it. And it really was kind of some of those years, the early years where you're just stuck in the books and you're like, I wanted to be a veterinarian. I wanted to work on animals. And all I'm doing is studying in a classroom surrounded by 4 walls in a classroom, like the same classroom with no windows, what felt like 12 hours a day.
And the same people. To me, it felt like high school again, because it was a fairly small class size and it was the same people every day. And we sat, I don't know about you guys, we sat in the same seats every single day.
Oh
Pretty
my
much,
gosh.
yeah.
We had our seats, and no one messed up the seating, like the seating arrangement, because
Oh
then
gosh,
everyone
that was
had
hectic.
had to get a new seat.
And we had lockers. I mean, it was high school all over again. Yeah.
2.0.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are some study tips? Like, what were your study? How did you make yourself study when you wanted to be done with books and walls and things?
For me, it was, so becoming a veterinarian is a second career for me. So I did the whole undergrad onto a career path in hotel and restaurant management, and then decided to come back to vet school. So for me, I knew that just being an older student, I would really need some support of my peers to just kind of dive into topics, especially things that, you know, I forgot about, you know, some physiology things that I didn't remember from my undergrad years and stuff. I really needed some support from some of my peers and who had more so just recently taken some of those courses. So I loved study groups. I got in with a study group super early on, and we became just a team. There were 5 of us from first year, and we just became a really solid team all through the 4 years. So I really owe a lot of, you know, my grades and my knowledge to them, and I probably owe them all the coffee in the world, just because they helped away late nights trying to get through some of those exam preps. So that's for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think having just a close group of friends, they can get you through anything.
Yeah.
You know, you can go to them with anything, and they're gonna help you as best they can. And I think the other thing for me is that you know, when I realized when I was studying or whatever, when I realized I got to the point where I just couldn't focus, I'd take a break. You know, otherwise I'd sit there and do the same thing over and over again, and I would never learn it. So I'd just take a break, try to go for a run, eat, do something just to take 30 minutes, and then I could go back to doing studying.
Well, that's a really good point, is when you think of getting through vet school, you think of the studying and the tests and the hours and occasional working on, if not real animals, then, you know, pretend animals like suturing when you learn it, you know. But the taking care of yourself is also a huge part of it, or you'll never get through. So it's, you know, what were your guys's, what are some tips on eating right and exercising and, you know, staying connected with family and friends? Why are you laughing?
Right.
I think during vet school, it was a little easier just because we had a little bit more of, it was the mental game of vet school. So I think that taking care of ourselves during vet school was a little bit easier to accomplish. And we're just laughing about it because now as interns, we're finding that it's not only a mental game, but it's also a physical game. So we're trying to we are trying to take care of each other and say, you know, have you eaten today? And but vet school, I think, was a little bit easier. Like friends, you know, it was always easy for us to say, you know, I need a break. Let's go grab lunch, or let's go outside into the grass and get some sunshine and eat lunch, kind of a thing. And I think that was a little bit easier of an accomplishment for us during vet school. It's a little different now as interns. I think
a
little harder just to find some time there to take care of ourselves. But vet school, it was, I have my dog, Cheyenne has her dog and cat, and those were really great, just cuddle moments. You know, I just cuddle and turn all my attention to my dog and kind of self-soothe with my dog.
Yeah.
Dogs make everything better.
Everything better.
Make everything better.
Can I ask one more question? Just what were your most favorite and least favorite classes or courses? Like, which are you glad to, like, shoo, it's done, I never want to do that again? Or I love that, that's what I want to be when I'm this internship year is done, I'm going to focus on that.
Yes, so it's twofold. We had at Colorado State, they have tried to really encourage communication, like client communication, and they built an entire course around communicating with clients, and even go as far as like getting actors to come in and play the very upset, very irate client that, you know, you're mimicking just a situation where you can't appease anyone with anything you say or anything you do. So they really try to push us in that way, to learn and build from that. And I remember sitting through those classes and those courses and just hyping myself up, like anxiety wise, this is going to be a terrible situation. But now that I think about it, now that I'm actually a veterinarian, thinking about some of those key concepts that they were really trying to drill into us were some of the best things that I had. So it's not necessarily all about the animals. You know, there's a person attached to that animal, and that is really one of those things that reminding ourselves, like, we're getting into this profession because we love animals, but there are always humans that we have to deal with as well. And client communications was one of my least, but looking back on it, one of my best courses.
Cool.
So appreciated.
Love that.
All right, we gave you some time to think, Cheyenne.
I know. Yeah. I think so. My least favorite was actually very easy to come up with, and that was it was renal physiology.
Oh gosh.
We had a tough professor. It's just a hard class, and I think I kind of went in with the attitude like, oh, if I don't like it, I just don't have to study as much for it because I'm not going to need it as much. So now looking back, that was a huge mistake on my part, because now anything renal, I'm like, I don't remember. I need to go look at my notes.
And for the listeners, renal means
Kidneys.
kidneys.
Yeah.
Look at you guys.
And I think my favorite was actually, I think, anesthesiology, any course taught by the anesthesiologist at school. And not necessarily because, like, anesthesia scares me. I think it's very frightening. But the anesthesiologists just love their job so much. And they are fantastic lecturers, and they are so invested in trying to get us to learn and love it as much as they do. It just kind of rubbed off on me. It was just, I just really enjoyed that class, those classes.
That's cool. Well, this just brought back so many memories. So I could talk to you guys all day, but I know we're on a schedule.
That was great. Thank you guys so much. And I'm sure that helped a lot of viewers at home who are thinking about going into vet school, what they can kind of prepare for and get themselves mentally prepped for the challenge ahead. But we need lots of great vets out there. So hopefully you inspired a lot of people to continue that path. So thank you so much for coming on and doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been rewarding so far.
Absolutely.
Okay. We'll try to get some sleep, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, we're going to move on to question number 5. This was submitted by Elizabeth on the Ask the Vet form at smartpak.com/askthevetquestions. So Elizabeth wants to know, could you talk a bit about diarrhea in horses and your experience about correlation with ad libitum, hay, or too much roughage in general, especially horses that have normally shaped droppings but excess water? Apart from the droppings, I get the feeling that a lot of horse owners have this problem. Also, 15 years ago, this wasn't so much a problem as it seems to be nowadays. I have also heard of studies that showed dappled horses in a herd are more susceptible to this, which I find very interesting. And as do I, Elizabeth. So I know these are 2 of your favorite topics. 1, dappled horses, and 2, poop.
The runnier the better, right?
Yeah.
And we talked about dapples last time, so.
Yes, in our last month's video, we did talk about
so
also, we'll definitely check that one out for sure.
we've come full circle. So her key phrase that I picked up in her question was normally shaped droppings, excess water. That's important.
Correct.
Remember that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So what she's perfectly described is a newly recognized syndrome in horses called, well, it's so new that there's a host of names. You know, when PSSM was new, it was called a bunch of different things, and then we finally settled on one. But it's free fecal water syndrome is one, just plain old fecal water syndrome is one, free fecal liquid. There's a bunch of different names based on what country actually you're from. So pretty soon the researchers will decide on a single name for this, but it is a phenomenon. It is newly recognized. Well, I'll phrase it this way. We're not sure if it's more common or not because it's so new that we haven't got the numbers yet. Once we begin to diagnose horses with it and develop some statistics, we'll be able to track in, 2015, there were this many, in 2020, there were this many, in 2025, and then we'll know, is it an increasing thing or is it just now we're paying attention to it? Yeah,
we're calling it, giving it a name. Yep.
Yep. So I did just recently write an article about this, and it's in the Horse Health Library. And this was my definition, which I actually think she did pretty well at. It's considered to be a separate condition from diarrhea or loose stool. It's when a horse passes fecal liquid separately from normal solid manure. And this can occur actually before, during, after, or completely independently of passing of feces.
Oh, independently of it.
Okay. They can just have fecal water running out and no feces. Yep. So you can, right away, I know you're thinking, as someone who grooms and shows, oh, please don't be a gray horse, because one of the biggest problems is cosmetics, aesthetics. How do you keep a horse clean, their back end clean, when they have this problem? And for the most part, it is a cosmetic problem, but if it's accompanied by also diarrhea, or if there's so much of it that you're actually burning the skin of the horse, I mean, he's always wet, then there can be some more serious consequences of it. Regardless, we want it to go away, right?
Exactly.
So there are more and more studies appearing. Like one just came out in January. There was one by Kinsley out of Germany in 2016. And this is maybe where she got her DAPL idea, which is close, but not quite on the money. So this paper, and I think we'll put the citations of both up so people can read them if they want to on their own. This researcher found that horses of low rank or pecking order in the social hierarchy of the herd showed more of it. So it's a subordinate. It's a social stress issue.
I was just saying, that would make me think it's some sort of stress related condition.
Yeah, and it seems to be not trailer stress or show stress, but the stress of being the low man on the totem pole.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. When you're at the bottom of the herd. So in winter, especially the horses that have it because of this reason, they showed more of it because the resources are limited, like shelter and food. In the summer, you might have the entire pasture to roam in and get away from the bullies. But in the winter, you might be in a smaller area and you have less of a chance to get away and protect yourself. So they're more stressed in closer quarters.
If you're low man on the totem pole, you can't get away from the bully horses. And then also there's limited resources. So now you're concerned about food and eating and things like that.
Right.
So it's just an added stress to them.
Yeah. The other two things this researcher found was it's more common in geldings and mares, which makes sense because who runs the herd, right?
Yep.
And then paint horses were overrepresented.
Really?
Don't know about that, but maybe breed or color has something. All breeds and colors exhibit it, but there was an overrepresentation in her study in paint horses.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, go ahead.
I was going to say more to come, I guess, more into the research there, I guess, and dive into that to see if there is
these are just two early papers. And so based on this research, other people will be doing research to sort of look more into the questions. Sometimes more questions are raised than answers, right? So that's how research is sort of guided along. You study the things that were highlighted in the last paper that didn't really make sense. In the Lindroth paper, that was the January 2021, it speaks exactly to her question about the forage source.
Mm-hmm.
She says that her conclusion was horses that showed the free fecal water did so with all types of feeding strategies. When they changed from a wrapped forage, which I think they mean, this was in Sweden and Norway, and I think that's their term for like a haylage or a silage, a bag. Okay. When they changed from that to hay, to regular long stem baled hay, to pasture, or even another batch of the wrapped forage, there were often diminished signs of the free fecal liquid. And this indicated that feeding strategy may be important, but it's not the only factor that explains why horses do this, because just changing sources, same category, but just one batch to another, one lot, one cut from another, and you see a difference. And one more thing, this paper noted that horses with this condition have a higher incidence of colic.
Oh, they do. I was going to say, you were
Don't ask me why. They don't know why yet. They just noted it. So that's what I mean. The next study includes that as a major portion of their study to try and figure out if that was incidental or it's a real thing.
So this seems like, so as to your point, it's something that we're looking into now as a new kind of area to study. Is it something that's been going on for a while and now we're just kind of drawing attention to it? Or is that, because she was asking, like, didn't seem like it was an issue 15 years ago, but maybe it's something that has been going on now, we're just actually starting to look into it. And it seems like now the research, we've gotten some more questions that have come out of this to kind of dive into a little bit deeper.
It's beginning, the research is beginning to catch up with the problem, which is that's how it works in the real world.
So is there anything she can do right now? Like, it seems like maybe potentially some of the feeding strategy and working with her vet might be her best option as of right now.
Right. Well, I try to bring this up on every question, but keep a journal. This really helps with this problem. Write down what your horse eats, and not just what, be really specific, like how much and time of day, and like when you notice the fecal water, and like, is it first cutting, second cutting, third cutting, and where you got it. Be as specific as possible. And then if you want, begin to make changes, document those changes and see if there was it got worse, it got better, stay the same.
Was he turned out with this horse over that horse? Was he turned out by himself?
Yeah, the weather. I mean,
Yep.
you got everything and document it. And so try to find out in your horse what makes it occur or occur more frequently. You may not be able to completely prevent it, but you may be able to reduce it. That may be the best you can do.
Elizabeth's going to do her own little research study then, apparently, as far as, well, we're just her and a horse. And Elizabeth, if you find out what works for your horse, please share it with us. We can add it to future research studies.
With pictures.
With pictures, of course. Well, maybe just send those pictures to Dr. Gray. Well, that is it for this episode of Ask the Vet. Thank you guys all for submitting your questions, and make sure to submit questions so we have them for our next episode. You can ask those questions anytime on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, our SmartPak blog, and our forum at smartpak.com/askthevetquestions. Just use hashtag AskTheVetVideo. And if your question was answered in this video or in a previous one, make sure to email us at customercare@smartpak.com so you can redeem your SmartPak gift card. Definitely want to start getting using those up now. So until next time, guys, make sure to subscribe and we'll stay safe.